Welcome to Free to Flourish Radio with me, Gemma Sands. This is your place to come and be inspired and empowered to live a heart-led life. Each week you can expect soulful conversation on topics like holistic wellness, living with intention, conscious business, and how to create life by your own design. So get cozy and let's jump into this week's episode. Hi everyone, welcome to this week's episode. It's a beautiful, beautiful Friday here today. We've actually got some sunshine, which has been a bit of a rare thing this summer, I have to say. We've not had a great deal, certainly in the part of the UK in which I live in. So it's lovely today to see the sunshine. I took a walk in our local sort of nature reserve this morning, out in the sunshine, took some time to meditate out in nature, and it was just really nice to be outside, sun on my skin, and take some time away from the computer screen. But it's Friday, which means it's time for another episode of Free to Flourish Radio, and I'm super excited to be here with you. And today I want to talk about learning to trust our own intuition. It's something that I love talking about. I'm pretty passionate about it. If you've ever done any coaching with me or anything like that, you'll know it's something that I teach and I talk about, and I want to share some stuff about it on the podcast with you guys today. And it's been coming up a lot lately for me as I've been thinking a little bit just about the kind of world that we live in this online, constantly connected world that we are in. And there's just so much out there. There's so much information out there. There's so much opinion. There's so much talk about things that it's really hard to cut through the noise and learn to tune into our own intuition, our internal guidance system. Because truthfully, we live in a world where we are bombarded with messages about the latest 5-step program to follow, or the free book that we can download, or whatever the latest self-help craze is. Okay, we come across all this stuff all the time, and we're starting to listen to everyone else's advice more than we listen to ourselves. And I've just been thinking a little bit lately about how backwards this is. And what if we stop taking everything that we hear as gospel and we start trusting ourselves more? So, even with the work that I do, even with this podcast, okay, sure, it might inspire you, but you don't need to listen to this podcast. You don't need to follow my suggestions because you already have all the answers inside of you. So listen to it, by all means, get inspired by it, but check in with yourself, check in around how it resonates, around how it makes you feel, and then take what you want and leave the rest. So you may know, if you've been around this part of the woods for a while, that 6 years ago I quit my job. I moved across the country and I had absolutely no plan, which I don't really advocate, but because I intuitively felt like it was where I was being guided, that's a decision that I made. Pretty much everyone in my life was against it. They thought I was crazy and they thought I was reckless. They thought that I was throwing away everything I'd worked for up until that point, my corporate career. But I knew deep down inside that it was the right move for me to take. And there have been many other times in my life where actually the opposite happened. I went against my intuition. I didn't follow what my gut was telling me. And I based a decision on what seemed rational or logical or what other people expected of me. And that has never turned out so well. So if you think about your own life, have there been times where you didn't listen to your inner GPS, your intuition, your internal guidance? And how did that work out? How was that for you? Did it work out okay? Did it actually seem like the wrong decision? How did it feel for you? Was it aligned? What if we stopped looking for all of the answers out there and we turned inwards instead? Well, I'll tell you what happens. When we do that, when we stop focusing on finding the answer out there, on looking for the next thing that's going to help us, on looking for the next thing that's going to make us better, looking for the next thing that's going to make our life complete, when we stop doing that, we actually start to create a life that is completely aligned to who we are, and we no longer feel like something is missing. And I'm not saying that this is easy. Following your intuition can be terrifying. we often don't know exactly where it's taking us. So trusting ourselves can be something that's really hard to do. It sometimes means that we have to let go of things in our life to make space for new stuff that we're calling in that feels more aligned. It sometimes means that relationships fall away, friendships fall away. So it's definitely not easy, but I genuinely believe that our only purpose, I believe that when we talk about life purpose, okay, that's actually the same for all of us. I believe that our life purpose is just to become more of who we already are, who we are at our core. So it's to shed all of those layers, all of the expectation and the judgment and everything that we've picked up. It's to let all of that fall away and become more of who we are down in our core. So you might be listening to this and thinking, yeah, that feels great, but how do I even start to connect with my intuition? Well, I've got 4 steps for you today. These are just things that have always worked for me. By all means, take them, leave them, whatever you like. Look at this, explore it a bit more, read about it, whatever. But what I will say is think about what feels good to you and then roll with that. So the first thing is to ask yourself, how am I feeling right now? And I genuinely believe this is such a powerful question. I use it a lot in my own life. It's something I've always used with coaching clients. And tuning into how you feel is a really powerful practice. So I actually start pretty much every day with this. I sit down with my journal and I ask myself, how am I feeling right now? And I let all the words flow out onto the page. I don't think about it. I don't edit it. I don't judge it. But I use that as my jumping off point to connect more with myself. And sometimes what comes up can actually be quite surprising, because I can, maybe in my head, I'm like, yeah, no, today's great. I'm, feeling pretty good. But actually when I stop and ask myself, how am I really feeling right now? On the surface, things might be really good, but there may be stuff underneath that, I want to explore a little bit further or dig into or just feel into. Asking yourself, how am I feeling right now, is a great thing to do when you're faced with a decision. So just tune into that. Okay, how do I feel? When I consider this scenario, how do I feel? When I consider this other scenario, how do I feel? And at any point when you feel like you're very much up in your head, asking yourself how you feel right now is a great practice to bring you back into your physical body. So how am I feeling right now? Ask yourself it now. Close your eyes, take a deep breath through your nose, and ask yourself, how am I feeling right now? So that's the first thing. The second thing that works for me really well is to feel into my physical body. And what I really mean by this is that we process our emotions in 3 different areas in our body. So we process them in our brain, we process them in our heart center, and we process them in our stomach, in our gut. So when we talk about gut feeling, yeah? So whenever you're kind of faced with a decision or something that's a bit challenging or something that you're a bit unsure about, check in with your physical body, okay? Check in with your head and your brain and what's going on for you there. How do you feel there? Check in with your heart center. How does your heart feel right now? What's your heart telling you about this situation? And check in with your gut. How's that feeling? And this can be in a physical sense, or it can be something a little less tangible. So it could be that, you've got churning in your stomach, or you've got some digestive issues, or you've got a headache. Or it could just be that you feel a little bit emotional and identify what that emotion is. It could be palpitations in your chest or a tightness. It could be manifest in any different way, but feel into your physical body and listen to what it's telling you. Our bodies are incredibly useful as a tool to understand our emotions and understand what's going on underneath the surface. But the truth is, in this world where we're constantly bombarded with things and we're constantly switched on, we often feel quite detached from our bodies and we are not open to receiving the signs that it's trying to give us. So that's the second thing. The third thing that I do is I make it a practice. Okay, and when we talk about having a daily practice, it has that word practice in there for a reason, because you have to practice it. You have to do it consistently, day after day, to make it a habit, to really start to tune in and see the patterns and see the things that are coming up for you. So for me, I make all of this a daily practice, okay? As I said, I sit down with my journal in the morning and I ask myself, how am I feeling right now? I use oracle cards. That's a great way to sort of tune into my intuition as part of my daily practice. So I will ask myself, or I will ask the question of, what do I need to know about this situation? Am I on the right path? What energy do I need to embody to overcome X, Y, Z, whatever I'm going through? And then I'll pull an oracle card from one of my favorite decks, and I'll just meditate on that and see what comes up for me. So that's another way in which I do it in a daily practice. I also make it a practice in terms of mindfulness practice throughout the day. So I will stop several times during the day. I'll ask myself how I'm feeling. I'll feel into that physical body. So the first two things that we've talked about. And I make that a practice. I do that a couple of times a day. Sometimes I include, deep breath in there, a little bit of breath work, breathing, all that sort of stuff, just to bring myself back into my physical body. So I make it a practice, and there's no hard and fast rules about this. This is one of the things that does frustrate me sometimes, is that we see all this great advice of you should be doing this, you should be meditating for 20 minutes, you should be exercising, whatever. Play, experiment, have fun with it, and intuitively feel into what works for you. So for me, my practice never looks the same day after day. The only thing that is consistent is that it almost always includes meditation and journaling, because those things work for me. But that could be a quick gratitude list, it could be half an hour of writing, it could be literally a few deep breaths, it could be an hour of sitting in silence. It's never the same. I tune into what my body needs. I ask myself, how am I feeling right now? And then I have some sort of daily practice which supports and nourishes me in that very moment. And the next thing I want to talk about is tuning out the noise, okay? So it's hard for us to be in tune with our intuition when we are so busy being in tune with everything else that is out there. And this is a hard one for me. I'm curious by nature. I love to learn. I love to read and explore, and I love the internet. I love finding out information. I love researching stuff. But sometimes in doing all of those things, I become far too reliant on everybody else's opinion and all of the information that's out there, and I lose that connection with my intuition. So I've had to sort of create some healthy boundaries around the time that I spend online. And, that's changed for me. I once took a whole 3 months off, no social media whatsoever, which was fantastic and liberating. Taught me a lot about fear of missing out and stuff. I learned a lot about myself in that time, but it doesn't need to be that drastic. So for me now, it is making sure that before I roll over and look at social media on my phone, what I actually do is I take that time to do my daily practice and check in with myself first. Okay, so before I absorb anything that's going on for anyone else in the outside world, I check in with myself first. It's also making sure that I don't find myself in a habit of scrolling through social media. So if I go onto social media, it's very intentional. It's to connect with people. It's to share something. It's to create something. And I try not to get stuck in that cycle of constantly scrolling and consuming. So it's about finding what works for you. Maybe it's that you don't check your social media between certain hours of the day, or you only let yourself have a certain amount of time on social media, reading blogs, listening to podcasts, whatever it is. Again, it's about finding what works for you. But I definitely recommend, if you are feeling very out of sync with your intuition, then I do recommend doing something to tune out the noise and allowing the first part of your day to be about connecting with yourself, understanding how you're feeling, understanding what's going on for you. So those are my thoughts on intuition. But what I want to ask you after hearing all of that is, how do you feel right now? How do you feel in your physical body? What of everything that I've just said really resonated with you? What didn't? And just start to begin to tune into your intuition in that way. As always, this is a conversation. I love to hear your thoughts, so you can leave them on the blog. You can leave them wherever you're listening to this. If you're listening to this on iTunes, you can hop across to the blog, leave them there. You can connect on Facebook, just search for Gemma Sands Tribe and join the conversation there. I'm starting to share a lot more over there, and I'm going to be doing some Facebook Lives. Got some exciting educational stuff going on around essential oils, so if you're interested in any of that, head over there. You can also find me on Instagram, Gemma L. Sands, and I share a lot on Instagram stories. That's where I'm quite raw and vulnerable sometimes, so join in the conversation. Let me know your thoughts. I hope you have a beautiful rest of your Friday and a beautiful weekend ahead, and I will see you here again next week. Thank you for listening. You have been listening to Free to Flourish Radio. For the full show notes and all other episodes, just head to gemmasands.co.uk/. And if you've enjoyed today's episode, do head over to iTunes to subscribe. I'd also be super grateful if you would leave a review. It makes the world of difference to me in this little project. And I will see you here next Friday for another episode.